Hey, John here. Looks like I'm on the cover of the Meet the Beatles album. There's no light over here, Of course, down here in the basement, I don't have a lot of overall room lighting. It's really about the lighting of the benches and stuff, so I can shoot videos that are recognizable and stuff like that. Which is, I guess, okay. It's not about me. It's about these projects. So, uh, sorry for the bad room lighting. Today, I want to talk about these solderless breadboards. Okay, there's some good ones out there, there's some bad ones out there, and there's good wires and bad wires. Let me tell you a little bit about what I've learned over the recent few years that might help some of you if you're just getting started in this hobby. A lot of frustration because to save a few dollars, you could screw up your whole project, get very frustrated, think that it's you. It's not. It's going to be a bad choice, all right? And I don't want to say that about this board. This is a really good one, by the way. If you get a cruddy one, it can be very frustrating.
All right, so let's look at where it started for me anyway. Okay, so these boards here, if you grew up with Radio Shack like I did in the late 70s, early 80s, these are the ones you bought at Radio Shack. The Experimenter 300, okay? I'm sure if I unbolted this thing and looked at the back, it'd probably say Archer or Micronta on the back. Those were the house brands of Radio Shack. No doubt that's what these things are. So at some point in the 80s, or I don't know, my late teens, I got bored with all the, jumper wires and having to get a bench supply and provide power to this thing. And I built this box, and inside here, it has, I don't know, transformers and stuff like that, and power regulators and stuff like that. So I would always have my 5 volts and my plus and minus 12 because that was common back in the day. And I could build whatever I wanted and test it out on this breadboard. I've got these 4 switches on here. If memory serves, these switches, well, first of all, they're connected to these 4 groups of 5 holes here. So if we were to look at one of these, with a meter or something, you flip it back and forth or whatever, and you'd see it going high and low, ones and zeros and stuff like that. So I would have my nice test inputs here. This display, you can see the dust on this thing. I just dug this off a shelf right 10 minutes before I started filming here. Wow. I had plans that never came through to put a bunch of LEDs in here and hook all these up so I could have hexadecimal LED display up here so I could see values, right? And so this was all set up for that, but I never built the board and put it in there. So this is just, it's for showing. And there's nothing to be seen there. This breadboard, these are probably manufactured in the 70s, and the thing about these particular breadboards, I mean, these are over 40 years old now, probably 45 years old. And if I take this phone wire, which I think is 24 gauge wire, and I poke it in these holes, I can feel there's little springs in there that grab on to, resistor leads and wires and stuff, and I feel a certain amount of tension grabbing on. So when the wire goes in, the spring is like this, and it holds onto the wire to keep good electrical and mechanical contact with them. And to this day, this has a really good feel to it. I feel confident that there's a good electrical connection in there when I put these in these holes, okay? And that's where we're going with this. What is the quality of the springs and the quality of these boards? You buy the wrong kind, and the quality goes down. You can be massively frustrated, and your projects can fail through no fault of your own other than the fact that I suppose you tried to save $2, or we're just not aware of the fact that you need to be somewhat careful when you pick the brands of these boards. Find somebody that's, that you have one, or expect to throw them away if they stink and go try another brand, okay? And that's the moral of the story. So, spoiler alert, that's what part of what we're going to be focusing on here today. Okay, so I'm inclined to see if this still works just for fun, a little tangential thing. You know me, I never have tangents. I plug it in here, turn it on. Who knows if something will blow up in there. I should have stood clear. Filter cap's gonna blow, It's been a long time. This got me through college. This is what I used when I was in college. So you can clearly see this is labeled ground down here. +5 is this whole row there. This section, these two sections of 5 right here are +12. These two sections are -12. And back in the, late 70s, you needed your plus and -12 because some chips used it. And this is no kidding. This is a 14, what is it? Is it a 1488 or that's a 1489? This is an RS-232 converter chip. And I don't remember if the 88 or the 89 was the receiver or the transmitter, but these were the go-to chips of the 1970s to take your TTL levels and convert them to RS-232 and or back again. And the one that went from 5-volt TTL to plus and minus 12 volts for RS-232 needed the plus and 12-volt power supplies. We didn't have these. Put some capacitors in here and have it automatically boost and invert and generate its own regulated power. No, you had to provide that yourself. And that's why this is on this board. Indicative of its age. So I got my Fluke hooked up here. Let's see if this thing still works. Yeah, baby. I don't have as much help for the plus and minus 12 here. I thought that I burned this up at one point in time. I don't know if these are going to work. Maybe I fixed it. I don't know. I do remember, though, that there was a little bit of a problem with one of my circuits. Look at that. Wow. Well, let's go for the gold while we're here. Let's see if these switches still work. This is switch number 2. It's low. Look at that. And it only goes up to 3.8 volts. Now, inside here, if I recall correctly, these switches are not connected up. These is like a double pole, double throw switch, but these are not just hooked up to ground and 5 volts that come out of here. There's a circuit inside here that has some NAND gates in here, by some 7400s, and this is routed through the NAND gate. So what comes out of here is not raw power. It is the output of a TTL gate. And as I've mentioned on my channel before, these are not always going to give you rail-to-rail output. So this one, when it's high, is 3.8, and when it's low, it's 0.05 volts. Let's see if they all work. I mean, why not? It's my video. I can do whatever I want. Look at the, oh, wow. How much stuff that you built in I don't know. I must have built this around 80 or 81. Look at that. If we put this on a scope, look, there's no way this is perfect. Absolutely not. I mean, the regulators in here are linear. There you go. That one. Maybe the probe wasn't on it right. I knew one of these things didn't work right, or something was busted. Maybe this is the one that doesn't work. I don't know. Well, there you go. 4 volts. Yeah. And this is actually a great example. You'll notice that what I just did there is move this to a different hole. Now, it may be that this hole over here doesn't work right, or it's got bad contact. The thing is, look at how yellow this is. Probably got dust and dirt and filth and muck in there, for all I know. You may have to really grind it around to get it, there you go, to get it to work. Perfect example. I swear this is not pre-planned or scripted or anything. This is what happens when these boards wear out and go bad. You don't have good contacts in here anymore. Of course, it could have also been down here. It could have also been the fact that these wires are probably stripped 25, 30 years ago, and they have oxidation on there and stuff like that. All of the above are reasons why, if you're going to build circuits and use these solderless breadboards, you need to be aware of how and why they will fail when they do fail. So that just like right now, when I see something that doesn't work right, I know what my go-to is going to be to say, I better check this. Because if you're just getting started and this happens to you and you're like, oh no, my circuit doesn't work. No. Your switch doesn't work, or this hole doesn't work, or your wire was bad, or you didn't put it in right. Because some of the, these mechanical contacts, the wire can actually kind of go in there sometimes and bend around or do something weird. You need to be kind of cognizant of this stuff. A little bit, mechanical and situational awareness can really help reduce the frustration levels a lot. All right, so much for memory lane. Here's a more modern option. All right, now there's a lot of different brands that you can buy that have these pre-made kind of things where you have all the breadboard thingies are all attached to this metal thing. They have these binding posts up here for your power supply. Honestly, I really don't like. I hate these. I should just take this off and either throw them away or chuck them back in the bin. This is a very 1970s era thing. Maybe even the 80s. I don't know, but it used to be that if you had a power supply. Because notice this one is not like the giant wooden box that I made. This is just the solderless breadboards mounted on a panel. And you got to power it somehow. Now, quite often, your power supply would have these things called banana plugs coming out of them. Now, I just yanked this off of a meter. This particular plug has this housing around it, this kind of a cylindrical thing that kind of protects around part of the banana plug. This is not the right kind of plug to plug into this binding post, but it's the right diameter, and you could kind of make it work. You could shove it in there like this. So the idea was that you would get a power supply, a bench supply, you'd set it up, turn it on, you'd have these bananas coming out of it, and you'd poke it in these holes, and this would be how you attach the power to your project, right? Now, how do you, at least to the board, right? How do you get it onto here? Well, if you look closely at these things, if I unscrew it, I don't know how well I can get the focus in there. Yeah, you can see, luckily, there's a hole through the bottom of this. You turn this thing down, and if you put a wire through this hole of this thing, and then you screw it down, it holds onto the wire. You then take the wire from there and you can plug it into whatever, the power strips and stuff on your project board. That's what these things are for. I have never, ever used them. And all they do is they upset me when I want to put this thing away. You got this stupid thing sticking out. And, if I have like 2 or 3 of these and they don't stack because they all want to, these are crap. Don't use it. Like I said, right after I get done recording, I'm going to take these things off, chuck them in a drawer, and I'll never see them again. This is what I bought this thing for. And this is kind of nice. It has these rubber feet on here. This thing, I don't know, at the time I bought this, maybe 20 years ago or somewhere around there, these were not that expensive. It was like 20, 25 bucks for this. Notice these little things. These are Phillips screws. This bolts these things onto this metal plate, keeping them nice and rigid and flat. You put this thing somewhere, you're great. This is a wonderful design, top notch. And if we use the same wire that I just showed you a second ago on my homebrew thing from decades earlier, and I poke it in these, and I, gauge the general feel relative to how the other one felt, this one grabs on even better than the, 40-some-year-old homebrew thing that I got over there. The Radio Shack one. This is top notch, in my opinion. If you put your components in here, they're going to stay. You put a wire in there, it grabs on. You got a good mechanical, electrical contact, low frustration. This is definitely one of the best boards I have. I got 3 of these. I love them. These are the way to go. But quite often, I'll have a project that's cluttering these up. Honestly, very often I don't have any of these available. They're always full of something and you don't want to take it out. Oh my gosh. Take 3 hours to put all the stuff back in, and and usually I'll do something and I'll come back to it, and on again, off again over several weeks, months, or maybe even like a year. If I look up, I've got some of these boards that I put together 3 years ago, and I still use them. I got CPUs and stuff on there, and I'm going to use the same processor, download some new code to it or whatever, and I hook it up to some different parts up here, and it just is a long-lived temporary project, a permanent temporary project on one of these boards, and it works great. But you fill these up, you need another one. So what do? Well, sometimes I have a very short-lived project. I know it's short-lived, and I just want one of these. All right. So I went over to Amazon and I bought a bunch of these a couple of years ago. I don't know, 4 or 5 of these things. And I said, I'll get the cheap ones. And I'm familiar with the problem that the little springs in here wear out over the course of time, and eventually they're garbage. You got to throw them away. I'm also familiar with the fact that if I buy them from a bad manufacturer or a factory second or some other low-grade piece of garbage, it may not hold on to the wire. I mean, from the get-go, it could just be a piece of crap. And I'll show the exact brands of the boards that I'm showing you right here. The reality is, I don't know where you can get these. Well, we'll Google it for a minute. Here's the model on this. This is a GB6-474 GSP board. I know where I purchased this, and they don't exist anymore. This is Fry's Electronics. They shuttered their doors about 3 years ago, unfortunately. And I mean, there was one down about 2 miles from my house here, and they were wonderful while they were in business, and now they're gone. But that's where I got this back in the day. So where do you buy them now? You go to your Amazon or something. And I'll show you where these came from on Amazon, so you know what not to buy. Okay? I can't tell you what you're going to want to buy, but I can certainly tell you what to look out for. And that's one of the main reasons of this whole darn recording here today. So if I put these in and take them out, I can feel that this thing has like half of the grabbing pressure. And that's actually, maybe that's a reasonable measurement here. If I put it in here and I pull it up, does the board, it actually almost lifts this board up. It does lift it up a little bit before it falls. There you go. It's kind of coming up. Not bad. You can pull up on this a little bit, and I can, lever the board up. Now let's look and see at some of the features of this thing. If we look at down a long ways of this, if we get the camera just right, or the lighting just, there we go. That's not look good. Nice straight line here. When it was injection molded and the plastic went in there, whoever did this knew how to operate the machine. Now, I don't know how well you can tell this, but you can see a little dark spot there and maybe another one up here. Well, I can tell in certain glaring light angles, again, it's kind of hard to see that on a preview monitor, there's a injection mold failure here and there. There's voids. So this, I am 100% confident. If this was made in the USA, and I'm not saying we're better or whatever, but normally, my familiarity with manufacturers in the United States is this is what we would call a factory second. They'd pull it off the assembly line, throw it in the crap bin. And if you wanted it, you could buy it, but you would buy what's called a second, a class 2 product. You'd usually have to go to the company store at the factory or an outlet store that bought a dumped set of products, and they would sell it super cheap, and it would be clearly marked because, this is our brand. This maybe Radio Shack would have one. This is an Aero board. However, it's a factory second. It has a defect, like maybe one of the metal things is missing. Maybe this row doesn't have any spring clips in it, and you can't use it. Or in this case, the injection mold clearly has failed. So this board I got super cheap on Amazon. I took the risk. I said, I'm going to just try it. Because if it is good enough, it's nice to be able to save an enormous amount of money. Because if you go buy these things on Amazon, we'll look around, do a little shopping in a minute, they can be anywhere between about $2 each to $10 each. What are you getting in that quality? What are you getting for your money? And this is what it really boils down to. What's the kind of metal that's in these little clips, and how strong are the clippies that grab onto the wires, and how long is it going to stay that way? If the metal's really brittle and you stick it in once, like aluminum would be a terrible choice. Once you bend it, it won't bend back. You need a nice good spring metal. And that's the point here. So this has got not as good a springy clippies as my Fry's Electronics board. And I can tell that by feel here. It's got some plastic, injection molding failures, but the failure of the injection molding does not, in my opinion, preclude the ability for this thing to do its job. It's not. It doesn't cause the board to fail. All right. And again, I want to stress that this is a nice straight edge right here. The injection molding looks pretty good. The roundness here is caused by, the play and error that you can have. These things here clip on the sides, and there's a little bit of looseness there, and all the brands have a little bit of looseness there. On the back, there's double-sided, this foam double-sided tape on here. And you may think that the manufacturer's doing you they're really nice. They gave me free foamy tape on here. We're going to tear one of these apart, and I'll show you why there's foamy tape on here. You really need this on here because, well, the short of it is this tape holds all the little metal thingies in here. This isn't doing you a great favor. If you bought one that didn't have something back here, it either is this double-sided foamy stuff, right? That you can stick. I can now stick this on something if I want to, or it's just one giant sticker. And if memory serves, that was how the Radio Shack ones came. It was one big plastic or vinyl sticker on the back to cover all the metal and hold them in place for all the metal clips in here, all right? So this is a pretty reasonable piece. And I got a deal on it. I think I got these for like $2 a piece. I bought, 4 of them or something like that, some, 7, 8 years ago. And unfortunately, they all started filling up with projects again. And I'm like, boy, I just need another one. And sometimes I lend one to somebody that never returns it, and they disappear, all right? So I went out back to Amazon. The MB102, as I recall, and Amazon confirms, you go back and look at your shopping history, look at mine in a minute, and that's what this thing claimed to be. So I found another supplier of the MB102, and I look at it now. It looks like the same thing that I remember when I bought this. So I bought some more of these. $2 a piece. Can't go wrong for $2. Well, all right. Now, I never opened this box before. What do we got in here? Let's look and see what we got. Now, I actually like this better than this one. Clearly, they're not the same product. I like the fact that the blue and the red, this is one big, long track here. So if I put 5 volts in ground over here, the ground runs all the way across the board. If you do that on this board here, it only runs halfway. Okay? If you want it to run all the way, you got to put a jumper in here to connect the left side to the right side. I don't know. Is that visible? We got too much light glare? I hope not. Okay? That's the difference between this board and this one, in spite of the fact that, as we'll see, they're both claimed to be these MB102 jobbies. Now, maybe this is an MB102A and an MB102B. Now, that I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that MB102 could be a family of products that somebody manufactures, as opposed to the product. And, of course, then you have to ask yourself, how do I identify if crappy marketing is what the answer to that question is. So here's the new one. Just got these the other day. Let's look at the first thing that I notice about this. This sucker is in the shape of a banana. All right. So while this one, like I said, this is a very well-made one. It's an imported thing. I didn't have a lot of hopes at $2 a piece that it would be fantastic. And like I said, these springies are not as good as my 20-year-old or the 15-year-old Fry's Electronics boards, but this is, in my opinion, darn right good enough. And I mentally say I paid $2 for it. As soon as it starts becoming flaky, I will get rid of it and get another one. And I was willing to do that again, but, talk about bait and switch, people. This is a piece of crap. When you're setting it down, it's like, whoa, it's just tipping back and forth. I mean, I'm okay. It's almost okay. I mean, if you stuck it on something, at least it won't be rocking back and forth like it does on my workbench. But look at that piece of garbage, all right? That's not worth it. Now, it would be if it was electrically great, but it's not that either. So, along with firing everyone who worked in the factory that knew how to operate their injection molding, look at how I can't get over that. What a piece of garbage. You still see voids in here. Again, I don't know how well that. I'm trying to find an angle for the lighting to work with this camera. I can see it, it's voided and voided and voided up, and that's wavy, going up and down like this in this trough. Again, that doesn't matter for the electrical characteristics of this thing. This is more of a cosmetic problem, and it was present here as well. So it's a factory second no matter what. I would argue it's a factory third. What a piece of junk. And by design, this thing sucks anyway. If we use look at that thing. Look at it. Oh, what a piece of crap. So I put it in here. I can actually get this board if I can get, these are phone wires, and these are not optimal, by the way, for this, because it can get like a little bent end, and then it won't want to go in the little springy hole. And it seems that that's my problem here. There we go. There's a springy hole. If I do this and I lift up on it, I can pull this board up into the air. I mean, clearly I can move it. You can see that. It's coming right up at the camera, and it's moving enough that you can see it. Look at this. I got the whole thing up in the air. There you go. Now on an angle, it's cheating. This will hold by, the force, that binding rotational force is going to, a lot more friction there, right? But if we do this board, I can't even get the board to move. This thing is like, oh, please hold my wire. Oh, there we go. I got a little bit of motion there. I guarantee you there's no way I'm going to get this board up in the air. It moved. So anyway, this is not even half. There's one that has a little bit of grip strength there. I got it up in the air, but maybe 3 millimeters off the ground. Not like this one, where I can get this thing a good centimeter. That one actually was up well over a centimeter there. Okay, and the reason I'm choosing this end is I have the most leverage here. I'm giving the board here the most benefit of the doubt. Oh, there we go. Can I get it all the way up on a 90-degree angle? Look at that. So this board here, vastly superior quality with the gripping strength, and that's a huge part of what makes a good one versus a bad one. These absolutely suck wind. Do not buy this, and I'll show you the exact brand not to buy. These are just crap. Now, as crappy as this is, I can feel it ever so slightly grabbing the wire, and I would be willing to bet that if you use these uber crappy boards, and I bought them, so I'll probably use them for my, crappiest of projects, knowing full well that I may have to throw them away in a moment's notice if anything doesn't work. I would never put a lot of work in. You do a Ben Eater style project with 1,000 wires with that? No. Throw this in the crapper before even starting a project like that. You do a Ben Eater project, you get a good board like one of these. I hope Ben is selling good ones. He's got these kits. I don't know if anybody's got one. Let me know what brand or what if they say anything on there. I would assume he's selling you respectable boards, because if he did not, and you put something together and it failed, it would really reflect poorly on him. And he's actually got a lot of good stuff. And I'll put a link to one of his videos below if you never heard of the guy. He does these projects where he'll put like the CPU and the RAM and the ROM and I/O and these massive things with like 8 of these all gang together in one big project with CPUs and displays. And I'm like, wow, that's just crazy. When I was a kid, I probably would have tried that, but nowadays, I personally find it a lot easier to say, look, I'm not going to breadboard this. There's too many connections between all these chips. I'd be here all day, especially if I had a crappy board. No. And for these days, unlike 40 years ago, when I can just order these to be manufactured and shipped over from China for $22. And I think this is a 4-layer board too. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you have made one, I designed it, I should know. I should have Googled it before I pulled it out here. But nonetheless, my point is, if you're proficient enough with a CAD tool like KiCad, once I get over a certain level of complexity with one of my designs, I would rather just order up a board and put it together in here. If this thing fails, I'm out the cost of the board and whatever components are soldered in. This is one that I made a mistake on, and I had to pull these pins out. There's a whole video on that. These are memories that I wired wrong on the board, and of course that's the downside, right? You wait 10 days to get your board, and if it doesn't work, you got to wait another 10 days to order another one, and you're $25 a pop plus all the sockets that you throw away, and connectors and things that you can't really recycle. But at the same time, this is just, in my opinion, a little over the top. You could breadboard this, but I'm not. I don't have the time for that. I'd rather code up the schematic and order up a board and know that I may have to order another one if I did it wrong. So If it's less complicated than that, that's where these breadboards come in. And like I said, I use them all the time. I got tons of stuff put on these in my shop, and you'll see me in various videos coding up or building up something on one or two of these solderless breadboards from time to time. So, piece of garbage. Let's tear it apart. If you've never looked inside one of these or want to waste one of yours, I'll waste one of mine. Thank you to my Patreons for funding the destruction of what is obviously and arguably a piece of garbage product that I thought I'd give a try. And again, in the defense of my own logic, my own failed logic, this here has the same information on Amazon, and yes, I'm not stupid. I know that tons of people will cross-list stuff, and oh yeah, it's the same thing, and it's not. What really gets me is it's the same packaging. So who knows? Maybe somebody bought, 10,000 pieces of this packaging that was being thrown away, and they put any breadboard in it at all and said, oh, it's an MB102 because the package says so. Anything could go on. Let's start some conspiracy theories, shall we? Anyway, this one is a complete piece of garbage. I do not recommend. Do not build. All right, so here we go. Let's just get this out of the way. This is garbage. I'm going to throw it away anyway. Here we go. Tear that off. Here's $2. I'm never going to say. Oh, they chose good tape. That is high quality. I give that a thumbs up. Now, I'm trying to get into this area here because I want to see if this board, like the ones on the Fry's board, has a little mounting hole in there. Or not. Oh, yeah, look at that. It does. You see there's a little dot right there? Look at that. Maybe this is a standard feature. And I like that, because the problem with these, if you start sticking them together, they get really flimsy and fall apart. So here's some that I stuck together. These are the same crappy ones here. And I, they want to come apart. And I don't like that. You can put them together. And again, other than the incredibly flimsy little clippies, and this is just awful. Just terrible. These are going to be good for like a couple of projects, and then I'm going to have to get some better ones. Again, if you have your favorite supplier, let me know. Let's finish destroying this and see what we got in there. You can start to see what's going on. See these little metal things here? Well, let's just pull one out. We can have a look-see in there. I don't know how to get in there. Maybe you can shove it through. Take a component here. One of these things. Long pin headers. There you go. That's why there's tape on the back, because these things can pop out. So this is what's inside here. Oops. It's all stuck on the tape. All right. Actually, it's probably easier to see against the white here. Let me zoom way in on the camera here. So maybe this is a little easier to see. So there is the thing that I pulled out of there. All right. So you can see it's just metals that wants to close up. It's a spring of some kind. Here, the light's better on this angle here. And you can see it's kind of what it's supposed to do, but they're not really closed all the way, are they? Now in their defense, there's this square notch in here is going to provide some side pressure that's going to try to squeeze it closed when you put it in there, and that's probably what's going on to some degree. And this is supposed to be able to go in here and grab onto our wire here. Boy, that's really hard to do this without any depth of field on this camera. I need a 3D camera. Here we go. Oh, all right. So these are the little metal clippies in there. And depending on how crappy this thing is designed, all right, if they pre-spring them, how much of an arc do we get on this side here? when they make that little metal thing. If they do a crappy job and they're pretty much straight, it's not going to work. And I submit that's probably what we got here. If they do a better job, like, they probably have a mold that's shaped like this, and the metal would come along like this, and something else would come in and kind of push on it and shove it in here to make it shape like this, and then come in and try and bend it around or something. So the machine that makes this is probably out of gauge or worn out, and they run 1 million of these units, and then the last 100,000 are crappy before they replace the die or something, or they got the new guy working the machine and the press wasn't quite working that day, and these came up and kind of came out crappy, and they sell them as factory seconds. Somebody comes along, buys them on, starts a little shop on Amazon and sells them as if they're the same product. That's what I believe would happen in the old days. I've bought factory seconds, and even probably most anything you buy on Amazon that's advertised by some rando idiot is some garbage dump that they got a deal on at an auction, and they're just getting rid of it. So that doesn't surprise me at all. I expected this thing to not be great, but I expected, honestly, it to be in the ballpark, at least, of these here. To me, this feels like a Cadillac in contrast to this piece of garbage. Let's move on to the jumper wires, okay? Now, you saw me a minute ago. I was playing around with this thing here. This is a regular old like phone wire, solid core. This is going to be your 24 gauge phone wire. Let's double check that. What is the diameter of 24 gauge wire? Wow, that's 0.5 millimeters. We'll look this up in a chart here to see what the gauge is after I'm done recording here. I think this is 24 gauge. Let's look at this thing. On allelectronics.com, some years ago, not 15 years ago, a friend of mine said, oh, they got a deal on these things. And I'm like, I don't want to buy pre-cut wire. What kind of an idiot do you think I am? I got a wire cutters, and I got huge cables of this lying around. Every time there's a phone guy working nearby, I have a tendency to walk over, say hi, how you doing, and gee, what are you going to do with those 2-foot cutoffs that you got on there of the 24 pair cables? And they go, we just take them back in the office and throw them out. I go, you mind if I have one? He gives me a couple of feet. Every time I get a couple of feet, it lasts me 10 years. I got a 50-year supply in the other room. Don't all hog them in my neighborhood. Those are mine. But yeah, I literally find them sitting in the street sometimes after somebody works. They'll leave them behind and forget about them. Anyway, I've been using those since the 70s, right? Now, that's a kind of a small wire, and it is kind of flimsy. So this stuff, you buy these are 22 gauge, I believe, at 0.64 millimeters. This is 22 gauge wire. It's nice and rigid. It's pre-cut. It's bent on these 90 degrees. And, this was offered like, $4 or $5 some years ago. And I'm like, well, it's only $4 or $5. And these short ones, these are a pain in the butt to make by hand. They really are. These long ones, we'll see. These are worthless. Do not buy pre-cut long ones. It's just stupid. Waste of time. You can make those easier. But these little ones, those are really, really, really handy. So here's my medium quality board here. And, you just put them in there. They go in. They come out really nice. Now, I pull out this pliers here to show you. I quite often will use these pliers, if I need to re-straighten them. This one's a little bit on the crooked side, and I kind of squeezed it. And, so you can put them in and take them out. If you don't have, I don't chew my fingernails, so it's real easy for me to get in there and pull these out. But if you can't get your hand in there, you can just grab a little pliers or something like this and get a little tug, and there you go. You can even put them in that way, and I've done this quite often, especially with these super duper teeny ones, like these, I call these one-holers. You can get them out of the box. You can grab it in the pliers like that. Let me see if I can get a better shot here. Grab it like this with your pliers. Is that visible? No, I get a little visual noise there. And I can hold it on a 90-degree angle like this. I can line it up like so, or you can come in if you got chips and stuff in your way there. And to exaggerate the motion a little bit, when I put it in, I tend to rock it back and forth like this. So if I'm going to do it like this, you can see I would rock it like this, because every wire, when you cut it, is going to have pointy edges and sharp cusps and stuff in there. And if it gets hung up, you're never going to get it to go in. And then if you force it, you'll bend the wire, you'll wreck the spring, and blah, blah, blah. you're obviously mechanically disinclined if you can't do that. But I have seen many of my collaborating students that do things like that. So again, if I exaggerate the motion of the rocking motion, when I put these in, that's what I do. These work out great. And even if you push them all the way down, these are really difficult to get out with your fingers. You just get in there with a little tweezers, your pliers, you go like this, you put it back away. Same with these. That's what I do. Works great all the time, every time. Now, about this box. It has real hinges. When I open the lid, it stays open. When I close it, I got a new idea. It stays closed. If you buy the kind that has a single molded clamshell, like this piece of garbage, what happens is you open it up. You can't really see it wants to spring up. It never really stays closed. It keeps coming. You open it and it keeps on wanting to close. It's always in my way. It's flopping around like this is a crappy box to begin with. We also have these partitions. Now, this is guilty of the same crime. And when I first bought this, I was like, a piece of crap. But you know what? There's different ways to suck at what you do. Some of them are better than others. These little thingies come out and they go back in. They also have these ones. I've never seen this on any other thing. See this little L-shaped thing they got going on there? It has a nice broad top on it. And while I don't think that that's extremely necessary, it does make it easier to see where the partitions are. And what happens is the way this lid is molded and the way it closes, the lid goes all the way down on there. When I touch this, I can feel it immediately hits into this thing. They sit in there. They seal it well. If this is closed and I tip it up side to side like this, the darn parts stay where they're supposed to be. Now, if you get a crappy one, what happens is these don't seat down in there right. And the next thing you know, they start getting up underneath there, and then the thing won't go down, and then more crap gets in there. They all get all of it. It's just annoying as hell. And I'm not talking about my inner Felix Unger here, who's, the anal retentive roommate in The Odd Couple. This is, just after years and years, hours of hobby stuff, your tools pissing you off, waste of time. So get a good box that seats correctly, and by that I mean this is as low as I'm willing to go on that totem pole. This box works very well in spite of these removable partitions. Everything about this box is crap. Everything about this kit is crap. This is a thinner wire. It's incredibly flimsy, which means every time I put it in or take it back out, the little leads get bent. Look at how bent this thing is already, right? The other one was a little bit bent too, but this is bent like a mile and a half. And as I can just feel when I'm moving it around, I don't know if it's made out of plastic or what. The wire is just crap. We measure the gauge. We're down to, 0.58. That's not that much smaller than the other one. Maybe a little up to 60. You're moving it around. You get an average because wire is a little uneven depending on the quality of your wire. So this is on the order of 0.58. We'll look the gauge up of this. This is actually like 0.58, if I recall correctly, is about 23 gauge. And if you buy, we'll look at the kit on Amazon in a minute. It's marketed at 24 gauge, which I think is like 0.55. These are flimsy enough as it is at 0.58. These are garbage. All right. Now, these super short ones, if they're flimsy, it's not so much of a problem, even though that's how bent these things are. And I've never actually used these. This is still relatively new out of the box. When I bought it, I opened it up. I took one look at it and just said, this is crap. And I never used them because I never really needed them. I got them because I wanted to know that if I ever needed more of these short ones, I'd have some around. I would argue these short ones are acceptable, is my point. These are tolerable. Okay? As they start getting longer, like these ones here, they're... What a piece of... Every time you pull it out, you're going to have to re-straighten it. And as you bend it back and forth, it'll eventually break off because it's solid core. That's what you do with solid core wire. You eventually break it. Goes in okay, but I can definitely feel that the diameter is smaller, so it goes in more loosely. When I pull it out, I'm probably going to bend the crap out of it. Trying to pull it out both ends simultaneously. It does come out. I did manage to bend it. A bit of a hump there. You're going to be it feels like crap. Feels like melting plastic in my hands. Again, thank you for giving me tons of long ones that I don't like, and I'll show you what to use for those in a minute. And this blue one found its way up there. How did that happen? Well, when you close it, This top, I don't know how well you can see this. Maybe I can tip it up a little bit and show you. It doesn't sit down on the box. See how much, look at how much it goes up in the air. So if you ever tip this up to its side like this, oh, you can see there's an orange one and a short red one in there. What happens is these things are going to fall. Look at that. So this one fell over there. This one's already half hung up in there. They're all going to get mixed around. That does not happen in this one. I can do all this sort of thing I want, and these stay put. Even though I don't like the movable partitions, these stay put. Let's see what happens with this if I shake it that vigorously. All right. This is there. I got a little green one in there. You can actually see, I don't know how well the camera shows this. They must be working their right under the bottom. You see the little bit of blue in there. Some from here working their way under. And this is why I don't like these partitions. Well, maybe they came over the top. I can't really tell. These partitions are actually functioning. I opened this up early. Yeah, there's a blue one over there. There's another blue in here and way up in there. And a yellow one. They're just all over the place. So they don't stay put. Not that that's the end of your life or anything. But it is annoying when all this stuff is in the wrong place or they're hung up and then they start getting mixed together in mass. These partitions here, and I just could see while I was trying to get it out of there. It's hard to get them out of here because this box has very squared off corners. This one is rounded ones. You know why this is rounded? It's because you can put your finger in there and get the dang things out. If you don't want to use your pliers or whatever, you can scoop it along the edge. If these are square like this and you get it in that corner, it's going to get stuck in there and you can't get it out and you'll sit there being frustrated and want to throw the thing in the garbage and throw it out the window and light it on fire and on the 4th of July, fill it up with an M80 and blow it up in your backyard. So everything about this is garbage. The only thing that I can say is not garbage about it, and why I don't throw mine in the garbage, is because these tiny ones can be used as they get longer. The flimsiness of this. Look at this stupid thing. Every one of these you're going to have to no. Don't buy those. They're crap. At best, buy the medium grade ones here. I don't know how to tell you to buy this since this was marked as the same way as the other one, and I'll show you in a minute. You go to Amazon. This is no longer a product that's being offered. Why? Because it's too high a quality. Maybe there's a conspiracy. The vendor is out to frustrate all electronics hobbyists in the U.S. so that they stop the hobby or something. I don't know. It's just annoying. Don't buy the crappy ones. All right, so I did a search in my Amazon purchase history and found these are the breadboards that are just absolute crap. And I just bought these a couple of months ago. So here is their write-up on them. There's your MB102 830-point solderless breadboard for Proto Shield distribution. Somebody lost in translation there. What the heck is that word doing in there? It just dawns on me, of course, that somebody saw that the Arduino community calls their daughter boards shields. So these are Proto Shield distribution. Yeah, let's just throw a bunch of random words in there that are possibly related to the product. All right, so these absolutely suck wind. These are the ones that I've been showing you, all right? So don't do that. And here's proof that these are the ones that I just showed you, all right? Let's scroll down a few years. In 2017, it looks like I bought what I thought was the same thing. I bought 4 of these from Hong 111, and they're, okay, sorry, you can't buy it anymore. You know why? Because they weren't crappy enough. You have to go buy the Proto MBs from somebody else that sell you worse ones. I think they're working their way down in the factory second level of quality. So here are the ribbon cables, the kind of things that I was showing you. Here's a bunch of these that I bought. It's amazing when I order these. These are the ones that break, all right? Just throw them away when they break. These are, they're good enough, but they really are kind of crappy. But as long as you throw them away as soon as they stop working, you're fine. All right. So look at that. Oh, pure copper wire for better conductivity. Yay. Yes, all this is true, but the quality of these joints on the ends are not so good, and the little ends crack off. Now, when you buy them, they're on these big ribbons, and what you do is you just pull them down a long way. You don't need to use the ribbon in all one piece if you're thinking that. No, you peel them off, and you can use them one at a time. What else do we got in here? So here's the little picture. You can see I got male to male, female to female, female to male in there, right? In one chunk of a kit. And once in a while, I just bought a bunch of these. They're $10 for a whole bunch of them. And you don't want them to be too long. These are actually really long. It'd be nice if you could get some that are only, a couple inches long instead of these giant ones. And they have those too. Search around a little bit. I got these because I wanted to hook things up to my Raspberry Pi and then run the jumper over to a breadboard nearby. And I needed some longer length wires. The reason you want to use as short a length wire as possible is because you don't, the length of the wire is going to cause interference and stuff in your signal. So here's one that's only 10 centimeters long. So you can get the short ones, long ones. In fact, these are cheaper. Why? Because there's less wire involved. So you can buy these in shorter lengths as well. And this is actually a pretty nice size. Maybe 6 inches would be reasonable as well. And they're pretty cheap. Just get a couple of them. As soon as the end starts feeling wonky and flimsy, just throw it away and get another one. Okay? You cannot put up with the kind of frustration where your project fails because your wires stink. All right? And if you buy good ones, it's going to cost you just enormous amounts of money. That's the sad thing. The fact that anybody even makes something so crappy is what really drives me nuts. Does it have to suck as much as these products? I don't know. This one is fine. This is perfectly acceptable in my opinion, even though you can't buy them anymore. Sorry, 6 years later, old Hong over here decided to go out of business. This one, just don't buy this. Okay, no. What do we got on here? So this is the kit that's similar to the one that I got. Oh, this is the one. I was clicking on my orders. So 3-4 years ago, I bought this kit. So this is the kit of wires that are crappy, and the box that's crappy, and the lid that doesn't have hinges, which is crappy, that flops open and flops closed when you want it the opposite position that it's in now, and they want you to pay $11, and oh my gosh, it's on sale. And let's click on this thing. So you get a couple of these long ones. Every one of these long ones is worthless because, like I said, they're not going to be the size you want. These little ones are okay. They're tolerable. I mean, you could, if you can't get anything else, this would do. What I would do is if I bought a box and it had these removable dividers and it stinks as much as this box does, I would go in there with some glue, or glue might not work because you might want to use some caulk or some E6000. By the way, E6000 is an incredibly awesome product. So let's do a non-gripe for a minute. How do you fix those? You get this stuff. Make sure you're well ventilated. This stuff really reeks. And you can get it at all the local hobby shops, and look at Ace Hardware and everything else. Walmart even says. So if you want to pay $8, that must be a bigger tube. That's just 3, 7, 8 ounces. How big is that one? You want a bunch of little ones or a few big ones or whatever. I use this stuff for multiple things. This would be excellent to use to glue in and seal up. Where the heck is the darn thing? To glue in and seal up these dividers. Okay? The reason I say that is because E6000 is absolutely crazy sticky stuff when it dries, and it stays flexible. It doesn't go brittle. That's the beauty of this stuff. Now, the reason you can find it at Michael's and Hobby Lobby and stuff like that is because I didn't realize this, but they sell it like crazy in these craft adhesive stores because this is what you see a lot of people use to glue rhinestones onto glasses or these artsy crafty projects. And they have the same needs we do. in that it needs to be a little bit flexible. Plus, if you Google search the MSDS on this, you'll probably say if you inhale it, you will die. But you'll also find out it has a lot of the dielectric property of this is interesting. It'll insulate you. It's like 5,000 volt insulation at 1 millimeter thick. Or I'm exaggerating. This has got a very good electrically. It's a good insulator. Okay, and I've used this to actually insulate wires on occasion in an ROV in a lake. I've used this to insulate wires. Probably not the best choice, but it works fine. Again, look it up and assess the usefulness to your particular application if you use it for something like that. All right. But this would be a great product to use to fix these annoying partitions. You don't want to put it on top because then you'll glue the thing shut. But it'll certainly get the things to stay put and prevent. Oops, I got to click this to get it open. It'll prevent the little parts from going underneath them, which is the height of frustration when it comes to these boxes. Okay. So what does it say in here? It says that this is 24 gauge wire. In my opinion, 24 gauge is crap. All right, let's look up AWG wire thickness. There's a gauge chart that I see all the time. Yeah, look at that. It's even pre-highlighted. I end up going in here a lot. What do we got going on here? So 24. So here's the gauge and the diameter in millimeters. Let's see. 24 gauge. 5'1", yada, yada, yada. So when I measured it and we had the 5 O's, that's your 24 gauge crap wire. The 5'7", that's what actually I got when I measured these. It was more like 5'5" or 5'4", if I recall correctly. So it's somewhere between 23 gauge and 24 gauge, according to this chart here. So it still sucks. 22 gauge is your 6'4". That is the good wire that I got from allelectronics.com. Allelectronics.com. This is a place where I fully expect to get factory dumps and liquidations. What I want to do is find wire, pre-cut wire cable. Maybe it's in the wire and cable. Well, here you go. 40-piece jumper, yada, yada, yada. 10 of each size, pre-formed wire. Now, this is not the same kit at all. You can clearly see. That's not that many wires. A lot of them are long. I would say this is of zero interest to me personally because I don't like the longer ones. What do they got for these things? Wow. Yeah, this is a totally different style of construction. I designed a little battery or a power adapter that sits on one of these boards. But if you watch those videos when I was doing that, you got to be careful because some of the manufacturers line these holes up with these. And other manufacturers don't line these holes up with these. So if you're going to build something that has, pins that try to reach in these holes, like those so-called like T-bones or something, that, your Raspberry Pi cable that comes out and puts a bunch of pins along here, and it also connects up on these. They have to line up based on how that board was designed, or it ain't going to work. These are 8 1/4, which is more than the $2 ones that I was showing you earlier. And it also tells you to use 22 gauge wires recommended. So why buy 24 when even the guy that makes the board say use 22, 24 sucks wind? Okay, now, is this a good breadboard? I don't know. At this price, it better be. I wish I had a better picture so I could see whether or not these things line up or not. It's physically different. It has these little round posts. The ones that I had, I just showed you, it has more squarish ones. So every manufacturer is going to be a little bit different about that. And I say that because if you want to gang them together, you can run into trouble. Here's some 7-inch wires with, males on both ends for $3. How many we got? How many are there in there? 30 of these. Maybe that's okay for $3. So they're 30 cents a piece. Or 10 cents rather a piece, I should say. Not too bad, I guess. I wouldn't make it for 10 cents. I mean, why not? All right. do not suffer because you wanted to save a buck or two on this, even though it's cost more than the other one. These have the nice little ones. If I had to, I'd buy. I did buy this, 4 years ago, and I hardly ever use it because it's a little bit on the flimsy side. But as soon as I run out of the good ones, the 24 gaugers, I will use these, And when they get bent, I'll just throw them away until the whole box goes in the garbage. Here's another one. I did some searching around in Amazon earlier, and here's a link. These are 22 gauge solid core, okay? Elenco made some equipment that we used when I was in high school in the 1970s. I know the name. In fact, Elenco made one of those big boards of the 3 that I have that are the good quality ones. That was the brand name on one of those boards. So these things don't look they're going to be fine if they're 24 gauge. I don't appreciate the fact that, I'm so happy they give me so many of these long ones. But and I'll stop ranting about that. But you get all these good little ones. It's 24 gauge. This is going to probably be a reasonable thing. You can also see the box has genuine, bona fide hinges on it, too. So this will be better in almost every way that I've been ranting about for the last half hour. What about the price? Like I said, you want to get something that's not total garbage, you end up starting to pay more money. That seems high to me. But wait, there's more. At $33, there you go. That's what, yuck. If you ask me, what should I buy right now, right here, today, that price is very reasonable. It comes with the wires we were just looking at, and you get a decent breadboard, and I would be willing to bet that the grabbiness of the springs on here is the same quality of the one that I bought from when I bought the same product at Fry's some years ago. And, like I said, I paid like $20, maybe 25. I can't remember that well from 20 years ago when I must have bought it. And the wires, even if you buy a cruddy one, you're looking at about $10. That's a nice all-in-one. If you want boards and you want to get the wires, there you go. That's what I would go for right here. The JW350, yada, yada, yada. And we all know that Taiwan is the highest quality manufacturing of wire sets. I'm kidding. I don't know anything about who makes the best wire. And here's another, what is this, a bunch of resistors or something? I don't know, the Elenco is not the same company as Elenco. All right, trust me. They're not even in the same league, I don't think. I've bought stuff from the Elenco. These guys have all kinds of doodads and dinguses and duberstats that are fun to play around with. But I don't put them in the same league as the Elenco stuff that I've had over the years. So, hey, sorry for wasting an hour and ending with, hey, just buy this one. But now you know why, okay? This is probably, if I had to buy one today and I wanted a big board, that's it right there. Maybe there's better quality stuff out there that I'm not aware of. But like I said, I am overwhelmingly aware of the fact there's a wide range of quality when it comes to these boards and the springiness of the little metal thingies inside there. And, obviously the warped ones and the plastic that's malformed. You don't want to wreck your projects because you're trying to save $2. Just get one of these types of things and decent 22 gauge wire, and your life will be much happier. So check the comments below. Maybe we get a discussion going on everybody's favorite solderless breadboards, and there's probably a lot of really good deals out there that are perfectly tolerable, like those middle of the road boards that I showed you earlier. I just wish I bought a lot more of them back in the day when I got those, because they were pretty cheap too. I think they were like $2 a piece or something like that. But obviously, if you buy them today, those things are garbage. You don't want them. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.